The thump is back with Royal Enfield's new Meteor 350. And now that we know that the voice of Royal Enfield for the masses can be heard in the BS6 era, what is it saying? Has the Interceptor magic, the 650 twin magic, been transferred onto the single-cylinder offerings from Royal Enfield? Should you be excited about the Meteor 350? How much and why? We ask this new Royal Enfield, this new Meteor, this new cruiser, exactly that. And we'll start with the city. Here the thump may not be all that audible, but the dreams of hearing it echo off mountainsides are born very much here. And from the saddle of the Meteor, they will seem sweeter still. At 191 kilograms, it isn't light, but it is 6 kilograms lighter than the Thunderbird. But more importantly, from the saddle here, it feels, well, much lighter. And that's because it's got an all-new chassis, it's got a sharper rake, which is all contributing to make little changes. You also have this wide handlebar, which means making your way through traffic is easy. When crawling in traffic, you will want to paddle a bit, and getting your feet down is easy because you have a seat height of 765 mm. I'm 5'6" and getting my feet down is not an issue, but if you are shorter, you could opt for the accessory seat, which lowers the seat height by another 20 millimeters. The Meteor's footprint is longer than the Thunderbird's, but you won't have to do any fancy footwork when making U-turns because the steering range is really wide, which means U-turns are narrow. Potholes, speed breakers are tackled with confidence, and really bad roads don't unsettle the Meteor. Now the suspension, it isn't perfectly sorted, so you do end up feeling a bit of the shocks. The front feels a bit softer, the rear a bit firmer. So if you were expecting a sofa-like experience, these simple telescopic forks and the twin shocks at the rear don't quite deliver that. The back seat isn't very spacious, so having an adult as a pillion for long journeys isn't really recommended. However, the backrest helps keep you in place nice and tidy. Are you excited at the thought of this new 350cc engine? Is it because of this sandcast finish, or that the crankcase actually looks like the 650 twin motor? I think what we're all excited to know more about is the refinement, shall we? The industry standard, globally accepted chai cup test. The engine now has a counterbalancer, which makes it smoother, a lot smoother. That's not all. This new engine has changed a lot. It doesn't have the chain primary drive, it doesn't have push rods, all of which makes it more responsive, more efficient, and it certainly feels like that in the city. You can leave it at low RPMs, 4th gear, under 30 kilometers an hour, open the gas, and it just chugs along nicely. You don't have to make too many gear changes, and in fact, Royal Enfield say that About 25 Newton meters of torque is available from 2000 RPM, and it really does feel that way, that it gets more responsive past the 3000 RPM mark. I'm guessing a bit here because it doesn't really have a tacho. But if you really want to hurry along, you will have to downshift. Thankfully, the clutch is light and the gear shift slick, so you will not mind slamming through the box and revving it up. Talking about revving it up, the old 350 BS6 motor struggled to get past 100 kilometers an hour. And this is an all-new engine, but it's still a 2-valve head. And its horsepower count is just about 0.4 PS more than the older motor, and torque is actually 1 Newton meters less. So the Meteor uses a shorter stroke design when compared to the Thunderbird, which helps it rev better. Power doesn't drop off at higher revs, and it does 0 to 100 in 15.5 seconds. The BS6 Classic 350 does it in about 24. So an 8-something second improvement in terms of 0 to 100 acceleration is incredible by any yardstick. But the true performance is spectacular by the RE yardstick, because if you compare a 15.5 second time to 100,
that would be in the ballpark of a modern-day 200cc motorcycle.
So those of you thinking of displacement equals performance, just keep in mind that this isn't a motorcycle for those in a hurry. Now, let's talk about the thing that all of us are dreaming of, touring. And if you're talking about touring on Royal Enfields, Ladakh. And if I had to go to Ladakh, I would have always chosen the 500 motor. But now, if you choose to take a 350 up to Ladakh, I won't talk you out of it. That's because this engine really has a wide rev range, and even when you rev it high up, it doesn't gasp for breath. And in 5th gear, which is an overdrive gear, when you open the throttle just the last couple of degrees, you still get some shove and performance on tap. Which means fewer gear changes, less hassle on a long ride. You can also sit in the 90 to 105 km/h zone comfortably. At 110, it starts to feel busy, not thrashy. But the good thing is, despite the added performance and usability, fuel efficiency is still strong. This returns about 42 kilometers per litre in the city and about 39 kilometers per litre out on the highway, which is pretty close to where the BS6 350 is. What else has changed is the fuel tank, which is now down to 15 litres. But when you think about it, that's still enough to get you from Tandi to Leh. So this is a strong engine, but it seems like RE was focused on nailing the basics rather than blowing our minds. And to do that, the Meteor 350 would need a higher speed ceiling so that it just went faster and could cruise at a better speed as well. But when you are climbing up those sweeping mountain roads, the Meteor flows smoothly and willingly. It will please you as it winds its way up and down. It leans super quick and precisely into corners, and before you know it, you're grinding out the foot pegs. And that's credit really to the tires, which are actually wider here, and to the chassis, which also offers a longer footprint. And along with all of that, you also get bigger brakes here on the Meteor. The stopping distance for this 190 kilogram motorcycle is properly impressive. It's even better than the classic 350 BS6, which had also improved. It's also worth noting that the twin-channel ABS doesn't startle you when it kicks in. But it's worth noting that these brakes actually are a little bit mushy and have a soft initial bite, which means you have to get used to the fact that in case of emergency braking, you need to use more force. And given that the ground clearance has gone up by 35 millimeters to 170 mm, Ladakh just got much easier. Now this top spec Meteor that we have here, the Supernova, gets this windscreen as standard, which is really good at keeping the wind blast off you, and that will make covering kilometers much easier. It is slightly adjustable, but you're going to need tools for that. Given the stretched forward seating position, your tailbone is going to have to learn to deal with that. But the seat itself, scooped out but comfortable. Cushioning is firm, which makes it usable. But Royal Enfield also offers an accessory seat with 3D mesh tech in it, which should be perfect for the serious tourers out there. To fulfill the cruiser ambitions, a certain size is important. And the Meteor isn't a small motorcycle. Your feet are pushed forward, not stretched all the way forward. The bars are wide and low, and which means even taller riders will not feel crunched for space on the Meteor. But if you're shorter than me, I'm 5'6", then the reach for the bars will mean you're sitting quite upright and will be a bit of a stretch when making U-turns. Well, there has been no U-turn in the essence of the Thunderbird. Actually, you might even say that it's a bit too familiar. People watching this pass them on the streets aren't going to point fingers at it and say, "Hey, new Royal Enfield." They'll probably look at it a little bit longer and after some time say that it reminds them of a certain Harley Davidson, which is a compliment, right? When RE went back in time to bring back the Meteor name, they also brought back some coolness, like the rotary switches, which take some getting used to, but are nice to use. There's also the special design for the front brake master cylinder, a nice touch. What I particularly like is this machine finish to the cooling fins, which gives it that contrast look, and that shroud for the exhaust, which actually very cleverly masks the connections to the collector box here to give it that clean look. And you can customize your Meteor with accessory exhaust, which gives it a different look, different seat covers and screen. So before anything else, which Meteor would you start with? I would start with the base, the Fireball. It's minimal and it has great colors. What's standard across the Meteor are the modern touches, like the headlamps, which are halogen, agreed, but there is an incomplete LED ring in it which makes it distinctive. This is also mirrored in the tail lamp. And this being a modern motorcycle, it uses modern materials like plastics. Plastic. 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 Now, I don't mind the others, but this being a point of frequent contact is going to feel a little disappointing. That's still metal. The mix of modern and retro stares at you in the face. In the instrument cluster, which is analog and LCD. Of course, there's a second screen as well called Tripper, which, when connected to the RE app, displays navigation instructions. Very handy. There is a handy USB socket here which you can use to keep your phone juiced up, but it will only charge your phone when the engine is turned on, which is good for the battery. And talking about the switchgear on offer here, a little bit better plastics on offer for the switches or for the units here would have been nice, and the shut lines could have been better too. In terms of features, the instrument cluster could have offered fuel consumption, distance to empty. Those are missing on this motorcycle. So clearly some corners have been cut, but why? So, should you be excited about the Meteor 350? Well, let's weigh things up. This Royal Enfield is finally delivering on the promise made by the Thunderbird ages ago, and it is fulfilling that potential actually quite well. It delivers a more robust experience, no oil leaks on a motorcycle in 4 days and over 800 kilometers with it. It is more potent, it has better performance, it's more comfortable, it feels well put together, and it has a bit more in terms of features. So the Meteor is taking the game forward, but it isn't really blazing a trail like the Interceptors did, like the 650 Twins did. For that, it would need more features, it would need better suspension, and it would need more performance on tap, so that it wasn't just fulfilling the promise of the Thunderbird, but making an all-new promise of its own. But we do not know the price for the Meteor yet at this time of the review. So if Royal Enfield managed to price it at the 1.6 lakh rupee mark for the entry-level Fireball variant, we'd still think the Meteor 350 is something to get excited about, and a lot.